It was one of those mornings where everything felt off, like the day was already moving without me. I was sipping my coffee, sitting at the kitchen counter in my old flannel shirt, looking at the dusty backyard, while Jenna stood by the sink, humming something, making phone calls. The house was quiet, except for her voice. She got off the phone and turned to me, eyes wide with excitement. Guess what? I got invited to this big golf retreat this weekend. Trent's hosting it. The CEO of that restaurant group I told you about. Her smile was like a kid who just got the toy they wanted, and she was so damn proud of herself. I didn't care about the golf retreat. Hell, I didn't care about Trent. I fixed HVAC units, not business deals. I'd rather spend my weekends on the couch with a beer, yelling at the TV, maybe tossing a football around with the guys. But I could tell this meant something to her. It meant a lot to her, like a ticket into some world I didn't belong to, and I knew she wanted me there with her. I don't know, Jen, I said, not really wanting to argue. I'm not big on golf or whatever this is. You know, business schmoozing and all that. She didn't hesitate. Please, Tom. It's important. It'll help my career. She was leaning against the counter, almost pleading. I need you there. You'll look good with me. Just look sharp, okay? I didn't want to fight. I wasn't looking for a scene over something dumb like this. So I shrugged, took a long sip of coffee and muttered, All right, fine, I'll go. The way she lit up, it was like I just gave her the moon. But already I was feeling the weight of it all, that sense of not belonging creeping up on me. We pulled up to the resort just after lunch. It was tucked away on a sprawling patch of land, rolling hills in the distance, a bunch of fancy stone buildings that looked like something out of a magazine. Everything about it screamed expensive, from the manicured lawns to the gold-trimmed sign at the entrance. I could feel the difference in my gut as soon as we stepped out of the car. Jenna, of course, was in her element. She was practically glowing as she tugged at the hem of her blouse, smoothing her hair down. She looked the part, sharp, confident, the kind of woman who belonged here. I was just me, in my plain-collared shirt and jeans, already feeling like I was in over my head. We passed a couple of guys in polo shirts and designer sunglasses. They all looked at me for a second, then went back to whatever conversation they were having, like I was some kind of ghost. Jenna, though, was on fire. She waved and laughed, talking to these big-shot executives like they'd known each other for years. I kept my hands in my pockets, sticking close behind her, already counting the minutes until this thing was over. Then she spotted him. Trent! Jenna's voice was a little too loud, but she was beaming. The guy had a strong handshake, firm, but quick, like he was always in a hurry to get to the next deal. His smile was sharp too, like he knew exactly how much power he held. He was tall with a perfect tan, wearing a Rolex that probably cost more than my truck. He looked me over the second he saw me, like I was some kind of, I don't know, accessory to Jenna's success. Trent, this is Tom, my husband. Jenna did her little introduction, all bubbly. Tom, this is Trent. He's the big boss around here. Trent didn't shake my hand. Instead, he just nodded and gave me a once-over that made me feel like I was wearing a sign that said, Don't belong here. Nice to meet you, Tom, he said, his voice smooth, but with a tone that made it clear I wasn't exactly his type of guy. Jenna thankfully didn't pick up on it. She smiled and, probably trying to make it less awkward, added, Tom's more of a hands-on guy. Not much for boardroom talk. She laughed like it was some cute little joke. I could feel the eyes on me, waiting for me to laugh along, so I did. It was hollow, though, felt more like a grunt than a real laugh. Trent gave a half smile and a little chuckle. I see. His eyes narrowed, and for a second I thought he was going to ask what exactly it was I did. But he didn't, just turned to some guy in a blazer, already moving on to the next conversation, like I wasn't even there. Jenna wasn't fazed, though. She stepped right into the next conversation, chatting it up with a couple of other guys who were probably making seven figures. I tried to hang back, but it was impossible. The whole place was so clean, so polished, everyone so put together that it felt like I was wearing a sticker that said, "Not welcome here." I stood there, hands in my pockets, and listened to them talk about their latest investments and mergers, nodding along like I knew what they were talking about. I didn't, of course, but they didn't seem to mind. They didn't care enough to really look at me. At least, not like they cared about Jenna. They were all smiles and pats on the back for her, and I was just the guy who was lucky enough to tag along. A waiter walked by with a tray of champagne, and Jenna grabbed one, holding it up like she was in some kind of ad. Her eyes sparkled as she joked with a group of women. They laughed like they had nothing in the world to worry about. Me. I couldn't stop thinking about the beer in the fridge back home. The one that was waiting for me, untouched and simple. But no, here I was, looking like a fish out of water, playing nice. I couldn't shake the feeling of being less than. The dinner was in some grand ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and tables with white linens so perfect they looked untouched. The kind of place where the wine glasses were taller than my entire kitchen cabinet. I followed Jenna through the crowd, trying not to look like a total loser, but it was impossible. She was practically glowing, talking to people like she was born for this life, and I was just tagging along. We reached the front of the room, and of course Jenna got seated at the prime spot next to Trent. She didn't even ask me if it was okay. It was like I was just supposed to blend into the background. She shot me a smile, the kind you give someone when you know they're stuck in a situation they can't get out of. "Have fun, babe," she said, a little too cheerfully. I didn't know what to do. I stood there for a second, feeling like a complete idiot, until one of the waiters directed me to the back of the room. They had a table full of what I figured were the plus ones, the husbands and boyfriends who didn't fit into the circle of polished execs, the ones who were just there because they were married to someone important. I sat down, trying not to be obvious about how out of place I felt. The conversation at the table was about as exciting as a funeral. A few of the other guys barely even looked up when I sat down, their eyes glued to their phones or their drinks. The women were talking about their kids' private schools, hedge funds, and their latest yoga retreat to Bali. I tried to join in, but whenever I said something, it was like I was speaking a different language. "Yeah, we've been looking into a few stocks," one guy said, staring me down like I should have known which ones to buy. He was wearing a sport coat that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. I gave a half smile. I'm more of a hands-on guy. I was trying to keep it light, trying to blend in, but it was like I was invisible. Another guy in a designer suit nodded like he understood. "Yeah, I get it. Not everyone's cut out for the stock market." He sipped his wine and went back to his conversation with the woman next to him, leaving me standing there with nothing but a fork in my hand. I looked across the room and spotted Jenna, still laughing at something Trent had said, her hand resting on his arm. Something about the way she looked at him sent a sharp, uncomfortable twist through me. It was like she was a different person when she was with him, laughing, leaning in a little too close. My stomach sank. I didn't belong here. She didn't need me here. She had them. She had him. It was like a slow burn, the kind you can't ignore no matter how much you try to pretend. I tried to eat, tried to keep my hands from shaking, but I couldn't take my eyes off them. Trent's hand brushed her shoulder, and she didn't pull away. It was like I wasn't even a part of her world anymore. The air in the room felt thick, too heavy for me to breathe properly. I didn't want to sit there, pretending I was okay, pretending I fit in. So I pushed back from the table, murmured something about needing some air, and stood up. I left without looking back. The cool night air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside. I could feel the weight of the day starting to lift, even if only a little. I needed a drink, a real drink, the kind that didn't come in a crystal glass. I found the bar near the edge of the property, tucked away behind some trees. It was quieter out here, away from all the noise and the fake smiles. I ordered a beer, the kind that didn't need an explanation, and took a long pull from the bottle. It tasted like freedom, like everything I'd been holding in for hours. I wandered around the grounds, the lights from the resort shining off the grass, the soft hum of the evening in the background. It felt better out here, less suffocating, like I could finally breathe again. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that this was all wrong. Jenna was inside, playing the game, laughing with people who saw her as part of their world, and I was just not. I kept walking, the beer in my hand a little colder than I wanted it to be, but I didn't care. I just needed the space, needed to be far from the life she'd built, the one that didn't seem to have a place for me in it anymore. The next morning, I didn't even want to get out of bed, but Jenna had already slipped out early, all bright-eyed and ready for the day. The mandatory fun was about to start, golf with the executives. She insisted I play, said it'd be good for optics, whatever the hell that means. I hadn't touched a golf club in my life, except for the one time my buddy Dave tried to teach me, and I nearly threw the thing into the creek. But Jenna didn't care. She was all about the show, and I could feel the pressure to fit in weighing down on me even before I got to the course. We met up with the group at the green, a lush patch of manicured grass that looked like it came out of a movie set. I stood there, gripping the stupid club like it was some foreign object, trying to act like I knew what I was doing. Jenna was already chatting it up with Trent, looking like she belonged there, talking about course conditions and swing techniques like it was second nature. I felt the eyes on me before I even took a step. Trent was the first to make a jab. "All right, blue-collar Tom, let's see if you can hit the ball straight," he said, giving me a smirk that made my stomach twist. Everyone laughed, but it was that forced, uncomfortable laugh. Like they weren't really laughing with me. They were laughing at me. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the ball. I swung, missed, completely. The group chuckled again. Trent didn't let it go. "Guess we'll need to call in a professional for this one," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. I could feel my face go red. I gripped the club tighter, but it didn't help. My hands were sweating, my heart was pounding. This was all wrong. Every step, every breath, every swing. I was out of place. Jenna, not one to let me off the hook, grinned from the sidelines. "Well, at least you're useful around the house," she called out. The group roared with laughter. Trent's chuckle lingered in the air, too smug for comfort. I stood there, frozen for a second, while everyone laughed at my expense. I didn't know what to do with my hands, my feet, my head. It was like I wasn't even me anymore. I was just a joke, the guy who didn't belong. I forced a smile, forced myself to swing again. This time, I actually made contact, but the ball barely moved. Another round of laughs followed. Trent clapped me on the back, his hand too hard, too condescending. "Don't worry, buddy, you'll get it next time. Just stick to the hands-on stuff." His voice was dripping with that fake, polished charm they all seemed to have. The kind of charm that made me feel small, like I was nothing more than a prop in Jenna's world. Jenna gave me a side-eye, but she wasn't looking at me like she cared. She was watching Trent, watching him approve of whatever small role I was playing in this stupid little game. My chest tightened. I wanted to say something, to stand up for myself. But what was the point? What could I possibly say to these people who were so far removed from the world I knew? So I kept swinging, missing, laughing it off with them. But inside, I was burning. Every joke at my expense, every laugh felt like a slap. I hated myself for being here, hated how small I felt, how invisible I was to her when Trent was around. The game dragged on, and I kept swinging, mostly just hoping the next shot would be the one that made me look halfway competent. But it didn't happen. I was still the guy who didn't fit in, who didn't belong in this world. By the time the round was over, I was exhausted, mentally, physically. Jenna was already talking to Trent about the next round of meetings, her eyes bright with excitement. I wanted to scream at her, tell her this wasn't me, but all I did was nod, hold it together, just a little longer. The resort bar was exactly what I'd expected. Dim lights, expensive cocktails in crystal glasses, and a bunch of people who seemed like they knew exactly where they belonged. The air smelled like citrus and high-end cologne, and the clink of ice cubes and glasses was like the soundtrack to their world. They were all sharing business stories, talking about deals, mergers, and investments in that smooth, self-assured way that made me feel like I was a spectator in my own life. I was nursing the same beer from earlier, trying not to be noticed, but it was impossible. Trent was at the center of it all, holding court like some sort of king, making everyone laugh with his sharp wit and effortless confidence. Jenna was right next to him, laughing a little too easily, leaning in just a little too close. Every time I glanced at them, my stomach twisted tighter. Then Trent turned to me, grinning like he was about to throw me into the spotlight again. "Imagine Tom negotiating a merger," he said, his voice full of that condescending charm. "Or even a group text." The whole bar erupted in laughter, the kind of laugh that felt rehearsed, like they were all in on the joke except for me. I felt my face burn, the blood rushing to my head. Jenna, of course, added her 2 cents, her voice too bright. "Oh, he thinks Wi-Fi is black magic." She laughed again, but this time it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a knife twisting. I was done. I stood there for a second, letting the laugh die down before I spoke. I could feel my hands shaking, but I didn't care anymore. The pressure had built up so much that it just came spilling out. "I might not make 6 figures, but at least I don't pretend to be someone I'm not," I said, the words coming out sharper than I meant, louder than I intended. The bar fell silent, the laughter choking off in an instant. Everyone turned to look at me, like I was some alien that just landed. Jenna's smile faltered. She tried to cover it up, but the tension in the air was too thick. She let out a nervous laugh, but it didn't feel real. "Oh, come on, Tom," she said, trying to brush it off. "You know I'm just joking." I wasn't having it anymore. I wasn't some damn joke. "No, Jenna," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm not a joke." I stood there for a second, trying to hold myself together, but everything inside me was screaming. "And I'm not playing this game anymore." The words hung in the air between us, heavier than anything I had said all weekend. I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the way they looked at me. I couldn't stand how she looked at me. I turned and walked out of the bar. I didn't care if she followed, didn't care if anyone stopped me. The last thing I wanted was to stay in that place with all those people who didn't give a damn about me. The cool air hit me as I stepped outside, and for the first time that weekend, I could breathe. I didn't feel like a fool anymore. I didn't feel like I was on display. I just felt free. I didn't wait for Jenna. I wasn't sure what I would say to her if she caught up to me. I just kept walking, the gravel crunching under my boots, my heart still pounding. I'd had enough. I didn't even know how I got home. One minute, I was walking away from the resort, feeling that anger turn to emptiness, and the next thing I knew, I was sitting in the garage with a cold beer in my hand, staring at the floor. The silence in the house was suffocating. I hadn't planned on staying out there for long, but it felt like everything had happened so fast that I needed time to think. I cracked the beer open, the cold metal against my palm grounding me in the moment. I replayed everything over and over in my head. The jokes, the laughs, how small I felt the whole damn weekend. I kept asking myself if I overreacted, if I was being too sensitive, but no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, I knew deep down that I was done. I was done being the butt of jokes, done pretending I could fit into a world that wasn't mine. The sound of the door opening broke my thoughts. I didn't look up right away, but I heard her footsteps, fast and sharp, like she was ready to say something, anything. "Tom?" Jenna's voice was thick, pissed, and something else. What the hell was that back there? I finally looked at her, standing in the doorway, her makeup smeared from crying, her eyes red. It hit me, the look on her face. She was angry, yes, but there was hurt there too. I didn't know how to feel about that, but it didn't matter anymore. "You embarrassed me," she spat out, her voice trembling. "You humiliated me in front of everyone, in front of Trent. Do you have any idea what that's going to cost me?" Her words stung, but it was the way she said me that got to me. Like I was the one who ruined her night, who ruined everything. "Are you serious?" I shot back, standing up, the beer still in my hand but forgotten. "You humiliated me. I'm out there, trying to fit in, trying to make it through the weekend without being a damn joke, and all you can do is laugh with them. You didn't care about how I felt, not once." She shook her head, like she couldn't believe what I was saying. "You just don't get it, do you?" "You never have. This is my life, Tom. You were supposed to be my partner, not drag me down." The words hit like a punch, but I didn't let them show. I didn't need to hear how I wasn't good enough for her world, not anymore. "Maybe you're right," I said, my voice quieter now, but still sharp. "Maybe I don't get it. But I sure as hell don't want to be a part of it anymore. Maybe you should find someone who fits better with your world, someone who gets it." Her face twisted. She opened her mouth to say something, but stopped, and the silence between us stretched so tight I could feel it in my chest. Then, with a bitter laugh, she turned and stormed out of the garage. I didn't follow, I just stood there, looking at the place where she'd been, feeling the cold air from the open door mixed with the heat from my frustration. I wasn't sure if I was angry at her, at myself, or at the whole damn situation, but I was done trying to fit into a life that wasn't mine. The beer in my hand was warm now, but I drank it anyway. I'd be damned if I'd let this break me. The days that followed were the kind of quiet that made everything feel worse. Jenna stayed in her office most of the time, and I kept to myself. We barely spoke. When we did, it was all surface, just enough words to get through the day. The tension between us felt like a wall I couldn't break down, no matter how hard I tried. I kept myself busy, working on apartments, doing the kind of honest work I knew, fixing HVAC units, replacing ducts, cleaning filters. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I liked it that way. At least, when I walked away from a job, I knew I had actually done something. The days blurred together until one evening I was sitting at the counter at the little diner I always stopped at for a bite after work. I was halfway through my burger when I heard a voice from the next booth over. It was Frank, an older guy who'd been a customer of mine for years. He was a regular, always chatting me up when I was there, offering bits of advice here and there. Nothing groundbreaking, just stuff a guy like me could understand. He was the kind of guy who had been around, who didn't try to impress anyone, and I respected that about him. He nodded at me, then slid into the booth across from me, like he was already comfortable. "Everything okay, Tom?" His voice was rough but kind, the kind that comes with experience. I looked at him, surprised. He didn't usually ask personal questions. I let out a sharp breath, leaned back in my seat, and shrugged. "I don't know, Frank. Just tired, I guess." He stared at me for a second, studying my face like he was piecing together something he already knew. Then, in that quiet way of his, he leaned in a little and said, "Listen, I've been around long enough to see when a guy's been walking on eggshells. That's what you've been doing, ain't it?" I didn't say anything, just took another bite of my burger, trying not to look surprised that he saw right through me. Frank didn't need me to answer. He just kept talking. "If she needs you to be someone else, Tom, she's not your partner. She's your boss." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I set my burger down slowly, the weight of it sinking in. It was like everything clicked into place. I hadn't thought about it like that before, but he was right. I'd spent so many years trying to fit into this life that wasn't mine. Trying to be who Jenna needed me to be, not who I was. The quiet hung between us for a moment. Frank didn't need to say anything else. He just looked at me, letting the words sit there. And I thought about it, really thought about it, for the first time. I'd been shrinking myself for her, making myself smaller so she could shine, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. I finished my beer, leaned back in my seat, and let out a long breath. "You're right," I said quietly, not looking at Frank anymore, but feeling the weight of what he said. I could hear it in my own voice, that crack of realization. I've been trying to be something I'm not. For her. Frank didn't smile or offer a pat on the back. He just gave me a look like he knew how hard it was to admit that. "You're gonna have to make a choice, Tom. Either you keep living under her expectations, or you step up and demand to be accepted for who you really are. But you can't keep walking around like this." I sat there for a minute, thinking. The anger, the hurt. It wasn't gone, but it felt different now. I could feel the weight of the decision ahead of me. Maybe I had been walking on eggshells for years. Maybe I had let her world swallow me up. But I couldn't keep doing it. I couldn't keep pretending. "Thanks, Frank," I said, standing up from the booth, my mind clearer than it had been in days. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this happen anymore. I had to choose, and I was done being small. When I pulled up to the house, it was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt different than before. The porch light was on, and there she was, sitting on the steps, arms wrapped around her knees like she'd been waiting for something. Maybe waiting for me to come home. Maybe waiting for me to do something. I stepped out of the truck, the weight of the day on my shoulders, but I didn't go inside. I just stood there, staring at her for a second, trying to figure out what I needed to say. Jenna looked up when she heard my footsteps, her face soft but tired. She didn't say anything at first, just let the silence hang between us, heavy like a storm waiting to break. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet. "We need to talk, don't we?" I nodded and sat down next to her. It wasn't the first time we'd had hard conversations, but this one felt different. It wasn't about surface-level stuff. This was deeper. "I don't know how we got here, Jenna," I started, my voice low. "But I've been feeling like I'm just a part of your world, not my own. Like I'm just a mascot for your success. You shine, and I stand next to you, but I'm not really seen. Not really me." Her eyes filled with tears as she blinked, like she was holding something back. She looked down, her voice barely above a whisper when she finally spoke. "I didn't mean for it to be that way, Tom. I got so caught up in everything, my career, the image I was trying to build. I didn't realize how far I'd pushed you." She paused, wiped her eyes, and let out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry." I hadn't expected her to say that, not in the way she did. It didn't fix everything, but it made the weight I'd been carrying a little lighter. I'd been angry for so long, but now I could see she didn't understand how much it had hurt me. "I didn't think you cared," I said, feeling the words come out harsher than I intended. I thought you were so wrapped up in that world you didn't even see me anymore. I do care, she said, voice cracking. But I was so focused on proving myself, on climbing higher, that I forgot to look at us. I forgot to look at you. I don't want to lose you, Tom. She turned her head, her tears falling quietly now, and I could see the real pain there. It wasn't just the frustration of what had happened. It was the fear of losing me. I didn't know what to say to that. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that she didn't mean to hurt me. But the truth was, I couldn't keep pretending. I can't do this anymore, Jenna, I said, my voice steady now. I can't keep pretending I'm okay with being the guy who just stands by, trying to fit into a world that's not mine. I can't shrink myself down to make your world look good. I'm not doing it anymore. I won't. Her face twisted like I'd slapped her. What does that mean, Tom? Are you saying you want to leave? I shook my head. No, I'm not leaving, but I can't keep losing myself for you. I'll support you. I'll always support you, but I need to be me. The guy who fixes the HVACs. The guy who likes beer and football. The guy who doesn't fit into your world. I can't be anyone else anymore. She stared at me, her lips trembling like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Finally, she nodded, her hand reaching out to squeeze mine. I don't want to lose you. I don't know how to fix this. Then let's fix it together, I said, my voice softening. But not by pretending. Not by me being someone I'm not. If we're going to make this work, I need you to see me. The real me. Not just the version that fits in with your world. The tears stopped. She took a deep breath and nodded. For the first time in a long time, I saw something real between us. Maybe we didn't have all the answers, but we were at least facing the truth together. And that was enough for now. Weeks passed and slowly, too slowly at times, but it was progress. Things started to feel different. It wasn't some sudden shift, but a slow, steady change. Jenna started putting in the effort, and I could see it. She invited me to fewer work events, and when she did, it wasn't with that sense of obligation she used to have. She actually seemed to want me there, not just as a prop, but as her partner. Most weekends we stayed home. She started doing things I liked, things we used to do before all this mess started. She picked up a football one Saturday afternoon and tossed it around with me in the backyard, laughing when I missed a catch. She even went along with my idea to hit up a local dive bar on another weekend. No fancy drinks, just beers and wings. It was a small thing, but it felt big. The real change came one Saturday afternoon when she said, I'm thinking we should have a BBQ. Get your friends over. Just us, no work, no suits, no golf talk. I raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? She shot me a smile. Yeah, I'm sure. Let's just do something normal. And that's exactly what we did. It was the kind of backyard BBQ I'd been dreaming of. There were no awkward silences, no uncomfortable small talk about stock portfolios or business mergers. Just beer, burgers, and cornhole. We laughed, drank, and played like we used to, before all the business stuff came into the picture. Her friends from work were nowhere to be found. It was just me, my buddies, and Jenna, finally looking like she was in her element without needing to put on some performance. I looked over at her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she looked real. Her hair was messy from the wind, and she wasn't worried about keeping up some perfect image. She was laughing with my friends, tossing back beers, just being herself. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her so relaxed. It felt like the weight that had been hanging over us for months, maybe longer, was finally starting to lift. Jenna caught my eye across the yard, still laughing, and I smiled. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it felt right. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. And I could see in her eyes, in the way she leaned back against the patio chair, that she wasn't pretending either. The night went on, the fire pit crackling, and I couldn't help but think that this was what we needed, something simple, something real. There was no forced laughter, no tension, just people enjoying each other's company. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Years passed, and slowly things fell into place. Jenna was still working in that world, still climbing, still chasing those high-end goals, but there was a new understanding between us. She respected that I didn't want that life, and I respected that she did. We found a rhythm. I started going to a few events, but only when I felt like it, no pressure. And when I showed up as myself. Jeans and a decent shirt, a couple of beers in hand, no pretense. I didn't need to wear a suit to be with her. She knew that now. She got that. We had a kid now, a little boy who, for the most part, took up all our attention. We raised him with the same values we'd started finding again. Honesty, simplicity, and the idea that what matters isn't what you wear or how much you make. He doesn't care about stocks or golf. He cares about running around the yard, laughing, and getting covered in mud. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. One night, we were sitting out on the porch, the crickets humming in the background, the night air warm but comfortable. Jenna was leaning against the railing, a glass of wine in hand, her hair pulled back like it was all those years ago, when we still hadn't figured things out. She looked over at me, her eyes soft. "Do you remember that retreat?" she asked, her voice quiet but heavy with thought. "The one where everything fell apart. I think that was the turning point, for both of us." I didn't say anything at first. I just took a sip of my beer, the taste of it grounding me in the moment. It had been so long, but that weekend, that stupid golf retreat, had changed everything. "Yeah," I said, looking up at the stars. "Best breakdown I ever had." Jenna let out a little laugh, shaking her head like she couldn't believe we'd come from there to here. She moved closer, sitting down next to me, and for a while, we didn't need to say anything else. The quiet between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was peaceful, like we'd finally figured out how to just be. We sat there for a long time, hand in hand, no words needed. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in years, I felt like we were stronger than we'd ever been.